Hey, paisans, the time has come. On the air since 2009, the independently produced, non-FCC compliant champ of video game talk podcasting. Here comes Tiger Claw Radio. Here's your host, Critical Failure.
Yes, friends, it's that time again. It's Tiger Claw Radio. I'm your host, Critical Failure. This week, we're going to talk about Dynasty Warriors 2. That was the next game in the box. We've got more from the top 40 chiptunes from Epic Collective. Dead Island 2 has finally been released, and all sorts of other goodies. Oh, yes. So let's kick things off with the next track on our top 40 countdown. This is track 19. This is from Jackim and Mikyu. It's called Access Denied. You're listening to Tiger Claw Radio. Dead Island 2 is out, and I just looked up the original trailer. The original trailer for Dead Island 2 surfaced at E3 2014, so almost 10 years ago. And I think this is a perfect example of why people lost interest/faith in E3. On the other hand, good-looking game, and it's very perfectly timed, I would say, that I have been playing through the original Dead Island again. First time in a long time. And now we got Dead Island 2. Okay, so the original Dead Island, I'm still playing through it. I was just playing it this morning, and it's one of those things where it's like, I got other things that I could play. You know, we got the Zelda randomizer. Dynasty Warriors 2 is my box game of the week. But this is an example of like, look, we got to play games that I want to play in order to make this thing work. So I'm playing Dead Island 1, and it's going okay. Yeah, now we have Dead Island 2. And one thing I'll say, just by looking at the footage, the max amount of zombies on the screen at any given time is way higher in Dead Island 2, which is, it's really cool looking game. But it's also worth mentioning that it's on, consoles and PC, but the PC version, Epic exclusive. So, I'm gonna wait a year for the exclusivity to run out, and not just because I desperately want to have it on Steam or nowhere else, but because it's a new game. And I'll just let the market sift it out and let me know if it's a turkey or not before I drop the however much they're asking for it. Because I did look it up, and there's like 4 versions. You can get the super ultra platinum version, which I'm sure is going to be over $100. Okay, I'm good. Don't need that. I will let the internet tell me if it's a good game first. But it's finally out, It's funny because Dead Island 2 is not like Duke Nukem Forever, okay? Duke Nukem Forever was in development / whatever you want to call it, purgatory for more than a decade, but everybody knew what that game was always. This game was in development so long, people kind of forgot about it. The younger generation was coming up and had no idea what Dead Island was. So it doesn't have the same, oh yeah, it's finally here kind of thing, in my opinion. When I look around people receiving the news, there's a lot more what? What game is this? Okay, I guess it looks all right. Let's give it a shot. So there you go. It's also nice to see more games come out with a co-op focus, because if you had the opportunity to play the original Dead Island co-op, great co-op game. But that's it. Again, this is a game I haven't played, so there's not a whole lot I can say about it apart from it's here. Get it on Epic Games, I guess, if you're interested. Well, I finally finished with Dead Island. I completed the campaign, and then I went back and did the DLC, the Rider White DLC campaign. And yeah, it's still a good game. The last time I finished it was on the Xbox, probably 10 years ago, whenever it came out initially. And I gotta say, man, people talk bad about Dead Island, but it held up. I really enjoyed it. One thing I will say is that the DLC campaign was bonkers. Like, when I originally played through it, it went like this. This was when the game first came out, and DLC was actually DLC. So we bought the game, my friend and I played through it, and we looked at each other at the end and we're like, you want to play the DLC? And we're like, nah, we've had enough. And that was it. We let it lay. So I didn't play the DLC campaign until, I finished it this afternoon. So when I finally finished it, I was like, you know what? Back in the day when we first played through this, we made the right decision. It did this move where it tried to rewrite the end of the game and retcon a few things and try and make things make more sense. I don't know. I didn't care much for it. But that's the case with DLC sometimes. What are you going to do? At least I had access to it. One of my favorite games from that era is Saints Row 2. And Saints Row 2 had DLC that I don't think you can access anymore. What's it, Ultor Revealed or something like that? There's some kind of DLC where it was the same situation. I played through it on the Xbox 360, and I got to the end of the game, and I was like, do I want to buy the DLC? And I said no, because I didn't have the money at the time, and it was the kind of thing where I was like, I'll circle back and get it later. I loved Saints Row 2 even then. But I never quite did it, and now I think it's gone, and I can't get it anymore. So, for better or for worse, when it comes to Dead Island, at least the DLC is accessible, provided you already have it, because I think it was removed, the game was removed entirely from Steam. Although I'm not so sure about that. So the question is, with Dead Island put away, what am I going to play next? And I've got a couple of things, on my plate. Mega Man 8 I wanted to try, and Dynasty Warriors 2 I'm definitely going to play today. But since the Hemrock just did his first entry in his Final Fantasy series, and he can't do one every week, I thought, in order to kind of hype that up a little bit, let's play Final Fantasy 2. That is to say, the Japanese Final Fantasy 2 on the Famicom, translated to English. I've never played that game before. It's it's on the top 8 of the first 8. So let's give it a try and see if old Hemrock's opinion holds up, or see if I agree with him, rather. I will check that out. And as always, I'll touch base with you next week and let you know what I think. But I'll probably forget and touch base with you the following week and let you know what I think. At any rate, if you have yourself an emulation device, go grab yourself a copy of Final Fantasy II with the English patch and fire it right up, and we'll play along.
Are you even listening to me?
Here's one for you. Our good friend Durabka, the gaming beast, over from the nextround.net, he sent in an audio comment. And this is a treat because he ran the Beastcast for a very long time, and he doesn't put out episodes very often. So it's rare you get to see Sean get on the microphone. And I've been looking forward to it for several days now, so let's take a listen.
Okay, so this is I haven't done this in a while, but yeah. So here's my comment for TCR 447. Yeah, I honestly haven't listened in a while. Just I've been busy, and also with my whole leg breaking and shit. But whatever. So I'm just gonna do it while the episode is fresh in my mind. Um, yeah. So you mentioned RetroArch Launchbox, and it's pretty cool because, well, actually, you mentioned RetroArch. I've been fucking around with Launchbox. It's like a how you call it interface. All it does, it's like it makes it so you can start your games from there. It's pretty cool with MAME. It takes a while. Like I actually got like a pretty much complete ROM set of MAME, and I got it to basically it downloads like the info and like box art and whatever, so you can like launch it. It makes it also you can like sort the games, which is really neat. You can sort them by especially by genres and categories. And it also has support for other, for example, RetroArch emulators for like a ton of emulators, but especially also even DOSBox, which I haven't fucked around with. Amiga, I haven't been able to set, like I tried to set it up, but I think I know what the problem was, is because Amiga seemed to be a bit more finicky. But I think it's because the type of ROM file I used is a type of ROM file where it's basically a pre-installed ROM file, and it didn't have the actual ROM information in it. And you can see it if it's like 200 kilobytes or less, or something like that, or just barely. It just has the file that starts the whole thing and everything. It's really weird that they would upload this, but whatever. I have been using that's the only like emulator that I've been using that is other than RetroArch now, which has the cores, which is just a collection of a system of running multiple emulators. But the emulator that I've been using is FSUAE, the launcher. It runs WinUAE, but it's a launcher and a way to also like it finds the info for the games and everything. So it's pretty cool. It's a little bit finicky to set up because you need like the OS files and so on for the different types, because it's like emulates pretty much all the Amiga computers there were, and there were a couple, including the Amiga CD32 and stuff. I showed it off in a stream that I did recently where I streamed some Amiga platformers, but I do want to maybe also stream or just play some other games. I'm not that much into platformers, but I want to try out more of maybe some beat 'em ups, some shmups, or also some RPGs. We'll see. Anyway, he talked about the Pico 8 handheld, and that's something you've been talking about. I know because I've seen the titles of the last episodes, and I kind of know because you also told me directly what's been going on, the saga of the broken handhelds and such. Now, because that's something that I might in the future have an interest in, because my Muga controller, it's still functional to a certain degree, but the two buttons don't work anymore from the 4, or don't work correctly. Like, it's kind of annoying. So, although I don't use it any much more, but it's like one thing. Well, that was well said. One thing that is really annoying to me is the planned obsolescence of all like electronic devices, and also your computer and stuff. I think had also to do with that. I think that why it broke down. That they're just built to fuck up after a while. Like a certain part just fucks up. Now I still have as Kaisi said, Gaming Beast does it turn into a Dorapka. My Gaming Beast, because I do name my, how you rename your computer. I think this is now the official third one that I'm using right now. The point is that the previous one, the Windows 7 machine, I still want to repair, because I think the issue is most likely the RAM, or maybe the cooling, the processor cooling. I don't know, something like that. But I'll figure it out, because I do want to have a machine that I can use Windows 7 on. And you did mention there this Zorin OS. If I can have a machine with some kind of legacy Windows 7 support, maybe even dual boot with Windows 95 or something really weird and old, that'd be really cool. Because I know you can emulate Windows shit, but it's kind of a pain. It seemed to be a pain in the ass to do so. And I think it would be just easier to have a computer with an old OS. But then again, can the old OS handle the new hardware? That's kind of the some stuff that has been also holding me back from that. Anyway, I think it's cool that RetroArch also supports these imaginary consoles. I think that's also really cool because, I mean, in a way, you could make I'm sure people have made a Raspberry Pi for this. What is it? What do you call it? What is the Easy RPG? Whatever the other fantasy console systems there are, because I know there's this one. Is it the Pico 8? Right, the Pico 8. To make a little Pico 8 console, I'm sure people have done that. Maybe with little USB sticks for the games, game collections or something. I'm sure people done that. I mean, it's not quite like having an own console, but kind of. One thing that I think is really cool also that with that you can run pretty much RPG Maker 2000 on everything. I still probably, if I'm going to use it to make games, I'm still going to just use the one I've used the most now, which is the RPG Maker VX Ace. I still have a project there that it's the Next Round RPG project that I still need to finish. I've been just lazy of not finishing it. Like, really, I'm at this point where I would need to make the art, because I do want to use custom art for the enemies, and then tweak the classes and the attacks. But then the rest would be easier. That's probably the biggest hurdle right now, and my laziness probably. But yeah, but that will happen, because I'm thinking, like, I've been trying to figure out stuff like Unity and whatever a little bit, because I have an engine to make like a Skyrim-esque style game. But as you said before many times, start with something small. So if I'm going to do Unity, I'm going to do my little shitty games that take like a couple of hours to make, and then move on to the next little shitty game, and just do it like that. But the thing is, with something like RPG Maker VX Ace, I can make a finished game now. If it's any good, that's a different question. Anyway, you also mentioned the randomizer ROM games like Zelda 1. Interesting enough, I saw one that was really interesting that was like, what was it? It was like half Zelda Link to the Past, so the Super Nintendo Zelda, and half Super Metroid. And it mixed and matched shit, and you could like change your there was like different skins you could choose. It was really, really weird. It was really interesting. And you could set up the ROM, because they had a ROM, like they have a website where you can set it up, and then it creates the file that you can then add to the ROM to make your randomized game. So there's no ROM uploaded. So it's a really cool feature. So you can make your original, like what you said too, random shit like that. It's an interesting concept. I don't know. I would almost like to see it if we could, because I know that they have, for certain types of these old games, they have editors where you can just edit the game. Like I know for Mario and Mario 3 and Mega Man Maker, they have like Maker style things. I don't know for Zelda. Probably they do have too, but we'll see. But I'll check out your random Zelda one. Let's see how far I got, because I recently finally did beat Zelda. Although I did do it with save stating, because I didn't have the patience anymore. Because I did get far also without save stating, but I was like, you know what? I just wanna, because the last dungeon, that is really like a fucking, whew. That is something for Zelda 1. But it's the last dungeon at least, Really, the boss is the dungeon itself, because once you're at Ganon, I mean, he's not easy, but once you have to use the silver arrows and stuff, it's just getting there, and then you having enough health for that, right? But I mean, that's the nature of the game. Yeah, you mentioned something like Gran Turismo and Kessen. I really got to check out Kessen, because I think it did, and I forgot about it already, so whatever. But Gran Turismo, I do remember, my brother had it. When I think he rented the PS1 at times, and then I tried it out once, and at the time it looked really cool, but I was never really into cars that much, and the simulation style gameplay was like, and that's too hard for me. That's a little bit much. But it's definitely one of the crown jewels of, like, probably it's the most like the most realistic, like one of the most realistic, at least early arcade, not arcade, most simulator style racing games for the PlayStation era, for sure. I also talked about the input lag. Yeah, the input lag. There's weird things you get used to for old games, but then that's something. Then later on, you can't tolerate it anymore. I have things with that with some certain old games, like tank controls are really annoying to me. Even though I do like the games in a sense, like the Alone in the Dark games and the old Resident Evils, but it's like where I don't know, like Postal 1, because Postal 1 I only played in the last couple of years the first time. It was really rough. I know they made an updated version, because I don't know, like I'm kind of happy I started with Postal 2, to be honest. Because it was like one of the games, obviously it was banned in Germany. Anyway, yeah, you mentioned Romance of the Three Kingdoms. Yeah, I saw it. That's like a game series that has been going on for a while. Also, that setting for Romance of the Three Kingdoms, that's the setting that they also used a lot for beat 'em ups and fighting games and like for any kind of genre. I guess it makes sense because it's like the Chinese people fighting each other all the time and everything, so it lends itself for a lot of things. Yeah, Dead Island. Okay, Dead Island, I had a good time playing it with Swingle. I also played it with you a bit with Swingle, but you know how you are with time and our time zones and everything. But I played it through with Swingle, and it was a decent game. I played with the rapper dude who does like the boxing shit and whatever with the rings. There's some cool things with the crafting, and I like that the multiplayer works well, but it's just like where it's another zombie game. I just feel like where, okay, it's on an island, so at least it's like you could kind of imagine that an island would be fucked first, you know, but I don't know. I feel like where if they would have made some kind of game like that, but with a different genre, I would have enjoyed it more. I think still it was fun, but I wouldn't go back to it, honestly. Maybe if we are like 3 or 4 players or something, but because it just gets very repetitive. Yeah, okay, here's something I wrote down when he said, it says my video is 13 years old, and use a ... okay, and I was like, yeah, man, like, well, fucking, we've been around, apparently, for quite some time. You mentioned that there was this collection of troll games, the 30 Fights of Loathing, and instantly, you know, because your repository, which I've been looking on the Discord, there's Sexy Hiking, because that was like the only game that I think from that list that I have actually played before you mentioned it. Because it was like some kind of weird flash gamey thing, but it was like a downloadable game. And had horrible graphics, but it actually, it's like the game that Getting Over It got inspired from. It's actually a pretty good, pretty challenging game, and also rage-inducing. Yes, it has MS Paint graphics, but actually the guy put in effort, I think. Yeah, and I think that's everything that you mentioned. Only thing I want to add is that I think, yeah, I would say take your time with building the new tank. You know, you have now, you're like fleeing out of the Panzer. You know, the Panzer has been taken out by the enemy, dust or something, and you're rebuilding now your tank. You're like scrounging together parts, you know, and you're making a bigger, better tank. So that sounds cool. I think take your time, dude. I took also my time with my new computer, because I got my new computer when I had a job at that point, and I had some money, but I was like, okay, let's wait for when I have everything, because I was like asking my brother and other people about the right parts, because I didn't want to have the cheapest parts, didn't want to have the most expensive parts. I wanted to have something that also people didn't like say, yeah, this is good, but it has a big issue, you know, like, I think that's a good way of doing it. Yeah. And this was a good episode, and keep on rolling. And again, it's been a while that I recorded myself talking to the void. But yeah, for the Death Mug of Doom or something like that, right?
Sean, good to hear from you, man. Thanks for the audio comment. It's been a lot of years. I appreciate it. So I took some notes listening to you talk, and I got a couple things to address. The first thing you were talking about, a launcher program that just organizes your games. That's commonly referred to as a front end. I had one for Amiga on my computer before it died, and I installed a couple of games, played with it a little bit. It was really cool. Never got around to making videos about it, but yeah, front ends are awesome. You also mentioned planned obsolescence, and I think when it comes to planned obsolescence, what killed us is the removal of changeable batteries. So here's what's going on. When batteries get old, rechargeable batteries, the systems that use them start to crash over and over again because the old batteries can't maintain the load of the draw that's being used on them. So what systems will do in order to continue working, instead of giving you the option to change that battery, they will release system patches to reduce the CPU workload. They will make the computer slower in order to make the battery last. And you'll see it in the patch notes as stabilization. We've optimized your system. And it does make, the devices last longer, but not as long as just giving us the ability to change the battery. Case in point, I still have my Samsung Galaxy S5. Now, mind you, my current phone is a Galaxy 22 something. I don't know. The S5 was from 2015. That phone was the very last phone I've ever seen where you could change the battery. And because I can change the battery, it still functions. Now, they still release those updates, so it's not as fast as it used to be. But darned if that phone isn't lasting forever. And that, when we talk about handhelds, I know Hemrock's favorite handheld is the V90. That is a strong, strong point in favor of the Powkitty V90, is that you can change the battery so it doesn't run into that same issue. There's a handful of handhelds that you can do that for as well. But that's the first one that comes to mind. Speaking of handhelds, you mentioned a possible interest in getting a handheld since your Moga was on the outs. Get you a handheld, son. This is something I think you in particular are really going to benefit from. I wish you had one already when you broke your leg. Get you something with Wi-Fi that's powered by RetroArch. I think you in particular should go the extra mile, pay the extra $50, and get something like that, because something that has internal Wi-Fi and is powered by RetroArch means you can play it online. I have particularly been enjoying my Anbernic RG505. It is not the only device on the market that does that, so you'd have to do a little research, but brother, you should get one. And you talked a little bit about Amiga. Amiga is a great system for retro handhelds. The thing about Amiga is that it's a perfectly suited system for like mid-range, lower budget handhelds. Like the V90 has a pretty good Amiga emulator on it, and so do all of my lower budget handhelds. The only problem I ran into when utilizing those emulators is, and you're going to know this very well, this is more for other people listening. The Amiga has something that it requires called the Kicker program. Think of it like a BIOS. Amiga needs a BIOS file in order to play. And that Kicker program is going to be different depending on which model of Amiga you're trying to run. So in order to run the Amiga on a handheld, you got to download the Kicker program, the Kicker file, and you have to be able to put the Kicker file in the right place. It's a very simple thing, but that hung me up a little bit. It hung me up long enough for me to get interested in something else. And because of that, I only ever really played Amiga on my actual computer and never on my handheld, which is a shame because come on, it's Amiga. We're talking like 8-bit era video games, which is what these budget handhelds do the very, very best, right? So, I don't know. That's something I should circle back to. And the very last thing I wanted to comment is you talked a bit about Postal series. You were glad you started with Postal 2. Brother, I'm right there with you. I will say this about Postal 1, though. Even the version of Postal that's not the remastered version, just straight up the original Postal, it ain't what it used to be. Postal used to work by where you would aim with the mouse. It had a very strange control scheme that made it borderline unplayable. It was one of the very first games I ever bought on GOG. It might have been the first, but I'd have to go back and do some research on that. Yeah, and somewhere along the line they updated it, so instead of having that strange control scheme that I can't even really describe, they made it play more like a dual stick game, even in the one that's not remastered. So later in life, I revisited the original Postal, and I was able to play all the way through it. Yes, Postal 2 is still better, but Postal 1 is now playable, brother. It's if you have it in your collection, I don't know. These days, I wouldn't necessarily qualify it as something you have to experience, but I'm glad I played it. You know, I remember I wouldn't say outrage, but I remember the interest in Postal, how it was like a weird character study, being ultra-violent when it first came out. I remember seeing... Did I see the box? Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I remember really wanting it when it came out, and I was still playing PC games off of CDs. And I played the demo for the original Postal, or I tried to, rather, at my buddy Engie's house. But for whatever reason, we couldn't get the graphics right. There was something wrong with the resolution or his particular graphic settings. Whenever we tried to run it, we got this weird, like, bright neon inverse color scheme that also made the game unplayable. So, yeah. It's playable now, and brother, it's a long time coming. So that's the original Postal. All right, we got some more stuff lined up, but before we get into that, I want to take a minute to thank the sponsors. I usually try and hit the 20-minute mark. We're about 32 minutes in. This is a Patreon-sponsored program, and as an old, tip of the hat, I like to read their names off on the air as sort of a hall of distinguished gentlemen. They are Darabka, who you just heard, Hemrock, EmeraldRangers.com, who made the deal to get us back on the air, and Tecmo Balls. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. I really appreciate your contributions, and I hope you're enjoying the party. With that, let's shift gears. Do I have one more? I think I might have one more segment in the bag. Let's see. Yes, I do. We're going to talk about the box. All right, let's talk about the box. This is the box of games. It was like a ton of games that I acquired this past January when we met up, and I've been going through them one game at a time, 1 week at a time. So this week was Dynasty Warriors 2, and I never played a Dynasty Warriors game, and I've heard of them like in passing, but I didn't know they were Koei. So I picked up a couple of them, and I gave it a shot. This particular one was $2. Was it $2? Hang on a second. I'm sorry, $3, $2.95, and I got it disc only. So for the PS2, I got Dynasty Warriors 2, and I also got Dynasty Warriors 5, complete in box. Started with 2, because I kind of thought that once I tasted the quality of life updates of the later games, I probably would never go back, and it seems like that's the case. I loved it. Okay, to cut to the chase, I feel like I'm bearing the lead. I absolutely loved it. It played, when I first turned it on, the presentation was a lot like Kessen. Kessen is, you're not actually controlling a specific warrior. You're issuing the commands, and that's more or less it. But the battle map with the way they use the counters, a lot of that stuff is almost identical to Kessen, at least between Kessen and this earlier version of the Dynasty Warriors games. I like 3D fighters, like one-on-one 3D fighters like Tekken and stuff like that, so I felt right at home. I started playing, and I didn't really know what I was doing. The idea is it's a 3D arena fighter, but you have to pay attention to the large scale, right? you're one little fighter and you're swinging your axe around or whatever, your sword, and you can mow through guys, but if you're not paying attention, the rest of your army isn't going to complete their goal. So I compare it an awful lot to like League of Legends or Dota 2 in that way. You're a hero that's stronger than all the other mobs on the field, but you have to pave the way for your mobs. That's really what you got to do. You got to work together with your team in order to, move forward. And I thought it was great. It was really great. This one being a little older, it has one of those purple discs, from the launch of the PS2, or excuse me, not launch, but like the first year or whatever, however long they were doing it. And as such, there are a couple of things that I felt like were simple quality of life issues that were missing. For example, 3D Fighter, right? And you can't use the sticks to turn the camera left and right. Now, presumably, it's because of the age. I have to assume they fixed that in later versions. But come on, this is PS2. PS2 always had dual sticks. That seems pretty. Pretty big deal that they missed that one. But it was good enough that my complaints are like nitpicky complaints. I loved, running around killing people with the old sword, and I do kind of have, maybe it's because I'm older, but the saving mechanism, right? The battles are rather long, and in order to save, you could find like boxes and you smash them open, and sometimes they have a heal, sometimes they have like a stat boost, and sometimes they have a book, and you use the book and it allows you to save. So that seems to work, but I'm playing this on like an actual PS2 using an actual memory card, and I don't like the idea of being done playing and not being able to stop because I have to find the next save point. I never want a video game to do that to me again. All right? It was okay in like the early PS1 days, I dealt with it because I was younger, I had time, but like, oh man, this is especially true of like RPGs from the PS1 era. As much as I love them, as much as it's a cultural renaissance, but having to play an extra 30 minutes to get to the checkpoint so you can save, it's just not something I could do at this point in my life. So I ripped the disc and I put it on my RG505, which also plays some launch era PS2 games. Haven't tried it yet, but here's hoping it works, because this would be a wonderful candidate to play using some emulation. Like if you have an optical drive, in your computer, run it on an emulator where you can save state and load state, because that would make this game truly awesome. It really would. So that was my introduction to Dynasty Warriors. And next week I'm going to play Dynasty Warriors 5, and hopefully I can kind of zero in on some of the finer points of the game. And then I have this copy of Dynasty Warriors 2 just hanging around, disc only. That's gonna stay. It's gonna stay untouched in my collection forever. So I don't know. It's good. It's a good week. I really liked it. It made me want to go back and try Kessen again, because the formula was so similar. It was the almost identical formula draped on top of a completely different core mechanic. That's my opinion. I loved it. And especially for $3. Holy crap. What is it on eBay? I know eBay prices are ridiculous, but I have to know. Hang on, let me look this up. Okay. I was expecting to be gouged. This is actually not so bad. Dynasty Warriors 2 for the PS2 for $10 with an extra $3.50 shipping. So almost $14. I feel like that's reasonable. And it looks like if you really pay attention, you can get a little cheaper. Here's one for $9. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's complete in box or not. But yeah, that's pretty slick. And I also think I underestimated how many Dynasty Warriors games there are. Dynasty Warriors 4. Dynasty Warriors 4 Empires. This is all on PS2, by the way. Yeah, so that's really cool. I don't know, like, I have to close the eBay window now because I get in this sort of mode where it's like, gotta catch them all. Gotta get all the Dynasty Warriors games now, just because I played the first one for like a couple of hours or whatever. Don't want to fall into that trap. At least not until I've played Dynasty Warriors 5. I have both of these games. I should play them both before I seek out new ones. It is nice to know that they're not obscenely expensive, though. Yeah. PS2 is a heck of a system, man. Now we're back up to real time, and I actually did end up buying another one of these Dynasty Warriors games. I found Dynasty Warriors 4 on sale, disc only, for $4. So I was like, yeah, let's go ahead. Ironically, it looks like there's a lot of these games, and a lot of them play largely the same, and that includes what are the other ones? Okay, let me put it to you this way. It looks like I have 4 of these games in the box that are all going to play almost exactly the same. So I'll do them as much as I can close together so we can get through it. The big problem I think I had with Dynasty Warriors 2 was that I had a sort of a resolution issue on my TV. See, there's a mini-map in the upper right-hand corner, and on the mini-map there's a green arrow that you use that turns around to show your orientation. It's kind of blurred on my TV, so I think I might play it on my PC to hopefully it clears up a little more. There's things they could have done to mitigate that, but that's a local issue. That's not a game design issue. So what are you going to do? All right, that said, let's shift gears and jump over to the fail bag. Now, I got a bunch of stuff pocketed in the fail bag, but I want to start by a simple little question that Hemrock posted over on the Discord. He says, "Add critical failure. What are your favorite pre-NES console games, like Atari 2600, 5200, Intellivision, ColecoVision, etc.?" Pre-NES console, so not PC. Well, my favorite pre-NES console is the Atari 2600. At least I can say that's the one I've had the most fun with. Okay, pre-NES console is limited. I played a lot of Atari 2600. I had an Intellivision back in the day when I was a teenager. And I don't think you can really count Commodore 64. I think that counts as PC. Or, a computer, non-console. So, favorite games for the Atari 2600 would be, Berserk comes immediately to mind. That's one that, like, every time I get out the box, Berserk gets played. Berserk is really good. Missile Command is really, really good. The other thing about Missile Command is that that's a game that's been done on many different platforms. So if you're going to play it on the Atari 2600, there's other places to play it. But I think the Atari does the best job of preserving how spooky it was to play Missile Command in the middle of like the Cold War. The game just ends with an ominous flash and then dead silence. Imagine like waking up being scared of nuclear war every day and then playing Missile Command. And no matter how good you are at the game, it always ends in global death. That is some bananas game design, if you really break it down and look back at it. So the two that come to mind are Missile Command and Berserk. But there were a bunch. Another really, really great one is Warlords. If you can play Warlords on an Atari 2600 with actual paddles with 4 people, that's like an experience like no other. But I've been able to do that once, and I think it was at MagFest. So we've played Warlords together like on other systems, but when you can get that actual paddle, I have one that Sendu sent over, but it's really jittery, and I haven't taken the time to break it apart and apply the fix, to actually get it working. But I do have a paddle. I would love to fire that up and play it sometime. Any of the paddle games really are something special, just because that controller had a feel like no other that they can't duplicate these days. So that's a few, and I'm going to push forward because I know I've got an email that has a bunch of from you that's got a bunch of details. Let me shift gears and go there now, and I'm going to keep the audio running while I do this because I'm afraid if I turn it off, I won't get back on the air. All right, so let me open up my email. All right. Hey, Paisan. I hope you're doing well. Thank you for another episode. Unfortunately, I do not have another entry in my Final Fantasy countdown ready. Hopefully, I can have one for you in the near future. My computer build has gone horribly wrong. I purchased an HP Z440 workstation that had no hard drive. I didn't think that was much of a problem. I purchased a couple of RAM sticks for an upgrade. They both seemed to check out. I even splurged on a somewhat expensive graphics card that worked on the first try. I bought a PCI slot M2 adapter for my NVMe drive that I had from a previous computer. I threw that puppy in the Z440 and installed Windows 10 without much issue. I thought everything was going according to plan until my new PC would not boot Windows. It did not make sense. I changed PCI slots with no luck. I repartitioned the M2 drive and reinstalled it multiple times. I even put Linux on an SSD I had from a previous computer, and despite several error messages, I finally got the computer to boot into Linux. Once in Linux, I could see that the M2 drive and could even see the Windows installation on it, but the silly PC would refuse to boot into Windows 10. I updated the BIOS. I even installed Windows 10 to an SSD, but it wouldn't boot. I was working on this thing for hours, going crazy, and I didn't have much time to waste, as I had other life duties to deal with. So I swallowed my pride last Saturday morning and brought it to a PC repair shop. I just wanted my computer to work. I explained my situation, and the guy told me he would look at it and try and call me that Saturday or Monday at the latest. Well, during the weekend, my internet connection got cut, as there's a lot of construction where I live. I had to wait days for someone to come and fix it. But in the meantime, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday passed with no word for the PC repair folks. By Tuesday afternoon, I give them a call for an update. Well, Mr. Computer Expert tells me he hasn't figured it out yet. Basically, he's tried what I've already tried. But no need to fear. He reassures me that he will call me Wednesday. Nothing on Wednesday, but thankfully, by this time, my internet got reconnected to the house. Finally, on Thursday morning, I received a garbled voicemail from Mr. Computer Buddy. I couldn't quite understand it, but it sounds like my Z440 is still under the weather. I gave it a few hours and called back in the afternoon. Same story. They're banging their heads against the wall and couldn't figure it out. 2 techs, including the senior-most one, have tried and failed. They're giving their third tech a shot. I told them if they can't fix it, they could at least try and install Windows 10 on an SSD for me and call it a day. Buddy said he would call me back on Friday. Well, I'm typing this up Thursday night, so we'll see. I regret the whole Z440 building venture. Mr. Fix-It told me that I'm going to owe them about twice as much money as what I paid to purchase the silly HP workstation in the first place. Well, that's a barrel of baloney farts. Oh, ouch. I suppose you live and learn. At least I feel somewhat vindicated that these highly rated experts, according to their Google reviews, can't figure it out. Anyways, I do not recommend the Z440, obviously. But it all worked out, and you may be better with another but even if it all worked out, you may be better with another workstation solution. Oh, if that's a route anyone listening is interested in pursuing. In other news, I got Alpha Centauri running on my trusty old laptop that I purchased when I sold my TurboGrafx collection years ago. I finished my turn on Discord, but it will not upload the file, so I'll probably send it out to you and Drabka via email here shortly. Thank you for uploading the Wizardry Let's Play. How is your newish Ambernick holding up? Did you take a dive into Zorin OS? Keep smashing through those walls. Oh, yeah. Oh, man. You know what might be worth doing? I was watching some guys talk about how they got into programming and any advice that they would give, like young programmers who are just starting. And one thing they said was, they all seem to unanimously regret not asking for help from their peers more. I assume you got the HP Z440 because of that guy, right, that you posted on my Discord? I can't think of the name of the channel off the top of my head, but the guy who buys these all the time. You ever think about just reaching out to that guy? You know? I mean, he's not a celebrity billionaire. He might have some tips for you. As far as why it's not booting Windows, I don't know. That's once computers stop posting, I know it's a nightmare because you start to panic, like, oh, everything's wrapped up in this machine and it's not doing what it's supposed to do. Been there before, man. Panzer did that when I first put it together. It didn't post. I don't know if you remember that, but that was crushing. It was an awful, awful feeling. So I hope you get something going. How is the newish Ambernick holding up? The Ambernick RG505 is a lot of fun. It's the first one of my handhelds that my kids have taken to. My eldest son likes to play Minecraft on it because it's Android based. It runs Minecraft really well. And so he can play Minecraft using 2 sticks instead of having to use a touchscreen. And he thinks that's awesome. As far as actually playing games, it plays about what you'd expect it to play. What I've been playing on it is just simple random things. I play Among Us. Actually, thinking about it now, I play more Android stuff on it than I have like traditional emulation. But just this morning, I loaded it up with the Zelda randomizer that I posted on the Discord because I want to play more Zelda randomizer. And once this thing came in the mail, I stopped touching my budget systems. So there's that. So yeah, it's a good time. It's good enough that I pick it up and play with it, which is more than I can say for some of my other machines. So yeah, I don't know. I dig it. As far as Zorin OS is concerned, I downloaded the ISO, but I have to get a refresher on how to actually put a live boot together. So I've taken baby steps. I haven't installed it yet because, time is a precious, precious thing. But it occurred to me this past week, I've got multiple laptops that are old, like maybe almost 10 years old, that I could probably just put Zorin on in like full bore instead of making a little partition here. Because I got the news, and this is a headline. This really should be like top of the show, but Steam is ending support for Windows 7. Do you remember how Steam ended support for Windows XP a few years back, and it was like a big thing in our circle? Windows 7 is getting the axe. So my old laptop that I still have, I might just steamroll that thing and make it a Linux machine entirely. I don't know. I'm still kind of thinking on it, though. But yeah, that's where I'm at with Zorin. I downloaded the ISO, but I haven't actually made the live boot yet. Keep smashing through those walls. Oh, yeah! Which I have to say, the oh yeah is especially on point because on Discord, Sean's been posting clips of none other than Randy Savage. Oh, yeah! So I've been watching Randy Savage videos all morning. Good to hear from you, brother. Over on YouTube, we've got a few comments. Tudor the Great says, Dead Island 2 just came out. You should try it out, man. And it turns out, first of all, I was shocked to hear that because I thought it was canceled a long time ago. Looked it up on Epic Games, turned out to be, I looked it up on Google, turned out to be exclusive to Epic Games, but we've been all through all that before. Long story short, thanks for the heads up. That I very much appreciated. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I can't find your links. Where's your Discord? I've done a really bad job of promoting my Discord. I got to make a video that's like, here's a solid link to the Discord. If you want to come hang out, you can. So that's cool. And he actually turned up at the Discord. So thanks, man. It's good. I'm glad you join us. Mecha Menace writes, Gran Turismo isn't just a racer, it's a sim. If you're racing for real, it's like the epiphany I had when played Half-Life 2 later when Valve was like, this game is physics. Either way, eventually I came around to the realization I don't want to do sims. I just want a simple jump and go arcade racing fun. Maybe throw in a few missiles or crazy characters if I play a racer. Specifically, Gran Turismo 3's series of license acquisitions just murdered my interest. Yup. I was determined to get them all before racing. Ooh, ouch. But after a few, I was like, why am I doing this if I'm not having fun? The thought sunk in that the rest of the game is going to be is this compounded. I think Gran Turismo 3 also impressed me initially because they were showing off the graphics. I don't think I'm impressed by graphics anymore. However, I'm more into style. Yeah, me either. I think many people have similar impression when they think of early cel-shaded games having a timeless appeal, or at least visually. I do think it's off-putting when games look like they were released on PS2, being released on PS4 or PS5, though. I'll tell you what, Mecha Menace. I'm not impressed by graphics alone anymore, but I am impressed by art style. And I think there's a massive, massive difference. Think on that for a minute. I bet you could come up with good examples. But he goes on. He says, there was a time after I learned to program, if I wanted a tool that did something, I was like, I want to make it because of ownership. I didn't know what I was doing behind the scenes. I know what it's doing behind the scenes, and I can tweak it, especially when I learn how to make the tools with a GUI. And now I'm like, who has the time? And someone probably did this already. So I search. Below are some of the tools I use regularly. I have, though I have tons more. I'm pretty old school. I don't like installs. I like portables, as they're now called. Yeah, me too. Bulk rename utility by TGRMN software renames a lot of files with a GUI interface. This setup allows all sorts of scenarios, such as finding certain strings of characters, removing characters from the end, auto numbering, adding strings, etc. I like that. I might need that for cleaning up the TCR archive. Lame XP encodes several audio popular formats such as MP3, AAC. You can set up a bunch of quality controls for things that are consistent variables, quality based bit rates, drag and drop. It's simple. SoundKit by Hong Lang Tang has saved me a bunch of time. Finds files via Explorer interface, encode and rip audio from video to different formats. It loads quick and has visual indicators. It recognizes and can code a file. I was going to suggest 3, but I think every Windows user should have one. It's called Desktop OK. It saves the location of every icon on your desktop to a profile. Then you can restore it later if you've changed resolutions accidentally. Some game did, or some other tool did something in the size of the spacing of the icons throughout the system. I save a profile every once in a while, and if there's a new icon like a shortcut or a folder or some text that I added in the meantime, I click restore and it figures out where to place them with the old scheme, usually starting from the top left of the screen. That isn't super great in describing how it compensates, but you'll figure out how to deal. I gotta say, I'm interested in that last one. Big thanks, Mecha Menace. Always glad to hear what's going on. Thanks for dropping the knowledge. We had a few comments on other videos. So last week was a big week for Tiger Claw TV. For whatever reason, I just decided to get back into YouTube. I have a little tube TV. It's off to the right of my office and sort of like off in its own little corner. And I shot a couple of videos there that actually garnered some attention. And that got me to use that area a little more, and I had a lot of fun with it. So there was a lot of stuff from the last couple from the last couple videos, and I'm not going to go through all those because I don't think it's not stuff that we covered here on TCR. But big thanks to everybody. With the exception of Demez, who used to comment on TCR a lot, but I heard from Demez again. And that was really awesome. So to give you a background, I did that video called EverDrive versus reproduction cartridges. Mecha Menace, this was your thing. It kind of sounded like you were trying to talk me out of buying individual reproduction cartridges. In the past, you and I have gone back and forth about this, but specifically about cheap knockoffs. Demez is a big EverDrive guy. Lots of official system, like actual hardware systems, all hooked up, all with EverDrives. I've seen it. He has a setup video that's beyond impressive. So this is what Demez says. He says, I disagree about getting the cheap knockoff EverDrive for doing ROM hacking. NES EverDrive is about $100. Then you get the quality product for not a lot of cash. Yeah, he's not wrong. He's not wrong. The only reason why that came up was, I think, well, for one thing, because you asked, and for another, the question was, do they exist? But yeah, go EverDrive, man. If you're going to go flash card, go EverDrive. Oop, hang on one second here. All right, where does that stick me? Let's pop over, and I usually do this first, but I'm kind of doing it backwards. Let's go to emeraldrangers.com and see what we have there. If you're listening on YouTube, remember that you're listening a week behind. So on Emerald Rangers, the new episodes come out. And for the past week, they put out ranking all Persona 4 Golden Party members from worst to best. We've got It's Hard to Quietly Enjoy Cameron Hahn's new album, Rocking in the Library. And Tiger Claw Radio 448, Ambernick made it right. And boy, did they ever. No comments on Emerald Rangers this past week, but I do encourage you to check it out. They've got a great site, and I really, really like being a part of it. Well, you know what that sound means. It is true that every time I wrap up TCR, it feels like I'm getting it out by the skin of my teeth, but I had a lot of fun this week. Particularly with Dynasty Warriors 2. I feel like I discovered something with that series. So whatever it is you're dealing with in your life, whatever problems you're facing, I just want to say thanks for spending some time hanging out, listening to some chiptunes, talking about some video games. I hope it goes well for you. I'm rooting for you, I really am. I'll see you next week.